We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Carlos Donjuan. I am the drawing area coordinator here at UTA. I'm really honored to have our guests here, which I'm going to introduce in just a bit. But just before we get started, if anybody has their cell phones, could you guys put those on silent so that they don't go off during our presentation, okay? So thank you all for joining us. Again, like I said, we have four very special artists with us here today. These artists we selected because they work with public art, mural art, or immersive art, and that's just a little bit of some of what they do. So, very happy that they're here. So I want to start with telling you a little bit about each artist. So I want to start with Sam first. We have Sam Lau here. She is a multidisciplinary artist. She is also a UTA alumni, where she graduated here at UTA not too long ago. Yeah. And I was very lucky to be one of Sam's professors. She took some of my classes here not too long ago. She works with different mediums, from textiles, paintings, murals. She's even worked in music as a musician, as an artist in that area as well. She's worked with clients, large and small. She runs her own studio with her husband, Jeremy, who is sitting next to her. And Sam also hosts workshops in her studio where she will teach you how to work with tufting. Is that correct, Sam? Tufting and fiber arts. So she is a person of many trades. And also a super cool mom, yeah. So again, this is Sam Lau, so I'm happy to introduce you to Sam. And sitting right here to my immediate left, we have Giovanni Valderas. Giovanni is another great friend of mine who I've known for many years. He is currently an assistant professor at Texas Women's University, where he teaches drawing and painting. Giovanni works with painting, installations, sculptures, and he's been a recipient of many grants from different. Let me name one right here. I'm sorry, I'm bobbling that just a little bit. He's received the Moss Chumley Award and also a micro grant from Nasher Sculptural Center. He's taught at Richland College, Mountain View College, and he's had works on large billboards as well as one of his projects. Another really interesting about Giovanni is that he's also involved with local politics and community growth and advocating for communities and people that have been almost forced out of their home or have been forced out of their homes due to gentrification and people moving in and pushing them out. So Giovanni's work transcends the studio and goes into the public and the community. So again, very special person to have here. Giovanni was also a gallery director at Kirk Hopper Fine Art, which is the gallery that we work for as well. So again, another artist of many trades, and very happy that we have him here today with us as well. Thank you, Giovanni. And this is some of his work as we're going through that. Okay. Okay, and who do we have next? Okay, next we have Jeremy Biggers down at the end over here. Jeremy is an award-winning artist and designer. Also attended Booker T. Washington High School in Dallas, which is a prestigious art program, art school. Jeremy is also a UTA alum, and Jeremy and I were actually in painting class together many, many years ago. So I've known Jeremy for a long time. Jeremy, again, is a true Renaissance man. He works in video, photography, fine art, murals, you name it, he does it all. And again, this is an example of one of his murals featuring their wonderful daughter, Tesla. This is in Deep Ellum, if you ever are going through that neighborhood. Jeremy has also worked with large companies, including IBM, Nike, Adidas, Jordan, McDonald's, the Major League Baseball club. Yeah, go Rangers, all right. Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Mavericks. And Jeremy, is someone that constantly stays busy and keeps himself, inspired in how he pushes his city and his community and how he involves that element within his work. So again, I'm very honored to have Jeremy here with us today. Thank you, Jeremy. And last but not least, we have Will, also goes as by Wheron. Will is someone that has been involved in education and is now currently a full-time artist and an artist liaison for Meow Wolf. So if anybody knows about Meow Wolf and Grapevine, Will was a big advocate for the artists, and I was very lucky that he allowed me to be part of that as well. So I owe a lot to Will. And he also runs what we call the Wild West Mural Fest, which is located in West Dallas. And he invites artists from all over Texas and even some national artists to come to Dallas to paint murals every October. And that has been very successful over the years. He's one of the reasons why Dallas-Fort Worth has started to really blow up when it comes to the mural scene. We're very thankful to have an artist like Will within our area because he has been able to make connections between artists and clients, and again, he's one of the reasons why we are becoming a major city when it comes to the arts, public arts or mural arts. So I'm very happy to have Will here with us today. Thank you, Will. So I have a few questions I want to ask our guests today, and we can go through each one of you all, or we can, decide who wants to jump in here. But just to start us off, what are some of the challenges that you all face right after graduating from school, and how did you get over that obstacle early on in your career, or obstacles in your career? Anybody want to jump in?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I think I knew before I graduated that I wasn't going to go into the field that I just spent 7 years in college doing, which is a thing that happens. You're just like time sunk, that part of things. Like I spent all this time doing this thing. I might as well get this degree, but I know it's not exactly the way I want to apply it. So I have a BFA in visual communications. I knew I was not going to work for a design firm. That was not going to be me. By the time I graduated, I had kind of shifted my visual arts into music. So I was doing music at the time, but I was able to use a lot of those skills when it came to like designing my merch, designing any of my packaging, any of my like album covers, like when it came to collabing with my husband for my music videos. Like I was able to still utilize those skills. So even though I kind of felt bad that I wasn't doing the, being like my peers and like at an agency and like doing all the big things and all that, I kind of still felt like I got something from it and it was useful. And I think it's just finding a way to utilize all the skills that you're using now in a way that suits you better or suits you more authentically or truthfully. So yeah.
Anyone else want to answer that one?
I'll jump in. I guess there's like, I think, two parts of my life. One where I graduated with my BFA in drawing and painting, and I realized I really couldn't do shit with that. Besides go teach public school, but I was a terrible student, so I was like, my luck, I'm gonna get all me's when I was younger, and so I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And then, so I was just doing manual labor stuff, like hanging up, if you've been to the fair, all the fin spanners, I used to hang all those.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And we started in August, and we went all the way to October, but I hated it. And I remember thinking, like, I can't do this the rest of my life. And then a friend of mine, she got into graduate school, and she kind of encouraged me to do it. So I was like, yeah, why not? And so I applied, and I luckily got in and changed my life. It was the best 3 years I've ever invested. And so when I got out of my MFA program, was adjunct teaching at Mountain View College, Richmond, basically saying yes because I needed money. And in graduate school, they teach you to, having gallery representation, building your exhibition CV, and doing all these things so you can look appetizing to other academic programs, so you can get a job, right? Like a tenure track job. And I was trying to do all that, and when I was in Mountain View, when I was talking to students just like you, it kind of dawned on me, and there was a bunch of other things happening. I grew up in Oak Cliff, predominantly Latinx community, and all these changes were happening, and I was thinking, here I am making this work for the gallery, and I was like, it's not really resonating with my community, and I thought, I'm doing this all wrong. At the time, I was teaching art appreciation, and at the time, I had all different walks of life in that class. It was a community college class. And there was one thing they all agreed on. They all hated my class. And I was trying so hard to make them love art as much as I loved it. But what I came to realize, the work that we were talking about in the textbooks didn't resonate with them because they weren't being reflected. And then that's when I started kind of doing my own thing and showing work that I loved. And that's where I was like, I need to start making work for the community. And so I started making these kind of guerrilla, art, I guess sculptures and putting them out. And I wanted to start a dialogue with the community. And that was actually the most liberating thing because I was no longer dependent on having to have shows in galleries. When I was ready to have a show, I'd just go put it out. And I learned a lot through all that. But I think that was the most challenging. It's like learning to be free and operate outside of those parameters that the art world puts on you.
Okay.
Yes, I think the hardest part for me was like, how am I going to make money? Being a psych and art major, like how do you graduate from college and make money? And like I had told my mom at 22, like I just want to make art, but that doesn't always necessarily come with, the whole money thing. So finding art adjacent jobs was my kind of move. I come from an educator family, so I taught public school. I ended up teaching high school art for 10 years. And then in my free time is where I actually like built my portfolio and started doing mural work and drew every day, became like a studio practice. Because if that was the goal, I had to have something supporting it. So that's what I would always tell my high school students is you may not find the dream job at 22, but find something art adjacent. So you are surrounded by art every day. It's going to push you to be inspired. It's going to push you to make the work you want to make. And then eventually, once you put in the work, hopefully it comes back tenfold. And I feel very lucky to be where I'm at right now and have room to grow, hopefully. But don't be stuck with I have to be a starving artist because it's a bad stereotype. There's ways to make money.
Jeremy, do you want to add anything to that?
I might as well. I mean, to echo everything they said, it's exactly that. I think for me, because I graduated high school in the late 1900s, it was the only two art jobs you could get were graphic designer, which no one knew what that meant. It was just a thing that it was just a catch-all term. Or you had to animate for Disney is the only way you could get like any art-related jobs. So similarly, it was trying to figure out how to make it work. And so I think a lot of my multi-hyphenate status comes from me just having that hustler mentality and trying to figure out no one is buying paintings like that where you can support yourself, and your family. So learn how to take photos, learn how to shoot video, learn how to do all these other things. So even before I got my graphic design job, because similar to Sam, I knew I wasn't going to get a agency job. I didn't even want that. And so it was more like, I'll shoot corporate headshots, I'll shoot weddings, I'll shoot music videos, I'll shoot literally anything to not have to sit in a cubicle. And then got a job where I was sitting in a cubicle doing all those things on the weekend. So I did that for a lot of years before I finally just realized, there was a lot of things that happened, like a couple of jobs in between there, but I think the catalyst for me to kind of get out there and strike out there on my own as an artist full time was my mom passed away. And when she passed away, it definitely was, like I said, just that kick in the pants of, I know I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so it then became a way more concerted effort to figure out how to be an artist full time so that I'm not wasting my life, 40 years sitting at a cubicle and wondering where those 40 years went. And so I think the biggest thing for me that I wish I knew when I was sitting in the seats that you guys are sitting in right now is you don't have to have the next 50 years of your life figured out right now. You just have to do the things that feel right and feel good to you now. And then if that changes, no matter how much time you've invested, you can always change course and pivot. Just because you've done it for a certain amount of time doesn't mean you owe it any other seconds. If you know it's no longer serving you, just move on and use that as you needed that bridge to get to the next building or the next door to open. So, that was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, getting into the work, you all have some kind of community component to your work. Giovanni, whether it's addressing issues within the community, or Will, whether it's murals and gathering artists to move forward, or Sam with the idea of creating work that has textures and is tactile and inviting people to touch. Jeremy, same with murals. So having that community component, why is that important to your work? And is there any difference in that work versus your personal work? Or are the lines blurring, you know? So why is, you know, thinking about the community important, and how does that affect your work?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in for sure.
Sure.
I think community is everything. It's public art is where my heart is. Like, I'd love to be in museums. I love gallery stuff, but there's something about murals and or public art that it's just like accessible to everybody. You don't need a ticket. You don't have to have any educational background to be able to enjoy it or appreciate it. So teaching public high school, I really grew to love mural work and public work because of that community aspect. You're beautifying physical community space, but then you're also allowing people into your world and your art with no kind of barriers. So I love that aspect of it. And then I think, you know, especially here in Dallas, we have a really cool art community. So everybody being able to support each other and like find opportunity for each other and lift each other up. So that's why we started the Mural Fest in like 2018, just as a let's find other opportunities for our mural friends. We have great artists here. We have all these unused walls, and let's make it into a thing. Let's like provide more art for the public viewing, and let's get these artists out there more. So it's not just about like Will Heron art ego all the time, but like what does it mean to be a Dallas artist? What does it mean to be a Texas artist? And that's all through community support, really.
And Sam, you get to invite anyone really into your studio to take workshops, and you get to teach them and share knowledge. Why is that important to your practice as of late?
I think for me, teaching what I do, or at least giving people the foundational knowledge of what I do, I think is just really important for people that have that creative drive and that want to be an artist, but because they've never seen an example of it in any form, you know, they don't realize that it's attainable. I feel like in a lot of ways we know art can be very elitist. It can be very, you know, clubby, cliquey, closed door to anybody that they feel does not meet the requirements or accolades to call themselves an artist. And I think that's fucking stupid. Anybody can make art. And for me, one of the reasons that I turned to a more tactile way of making art is because I wanted that sort of intimacy that can be garnered through art. And the idea of touching a piece of artwork is so taboo. But also, you know, sometimes you see a piece of work and you really want to get up close to it. You want to see how it's constructed. You want to see brushstrokes. You want to see every little piece that went into making that work of art. And the fact that I couldn't do that just made me, like, it hurt me a little bit, and it just made me feel like I was really missing something. So I turned to making work that you could physically experience. And for me, that makes a like deeper impact of the artwork. You're not just experiencing it on a visual level or emotional level, you're also experiencing it on a physical level, which is just another way of that art sort of making its impact on you. And when it comes to teaching that craft, I remember how hard it was when I started, and there wasn't a lot of resources, and I kind of had to figure things out and make things up as I went. And if I can remove some of those obstacles for somebody else and sort of hand them at least an easier starting point that might get them further along, or give them that first bit of confidence that may help them take further risk, I'm super grateful that I'm able to do that, and happy that they're able to receive that from me.
And Jeremy, in your case, you have murals, you know, within these big corporate offices, for example, IBM, but then you also have murals in the community, you know, where you reflect, you know, idols that people idolize in those communities, like Nipsey Hussle or Selena. So why is it important for you to still maintain your work or your presence within the community, and how does that, you know, inspire you to, you know, continue with that?
For sure, yeah. So I grew up in South Dallas near Fair Park, and in the neighborhood that I grew up in, my dad was one of those people. There was, if you were born, you also died on that same block. You didn't even venture as north as downtown Dallas. And so to be in that community and see so many people never even leave, like just their immediate community. I would see like murals that were done by, you know, someone's cousin or someone's uncle that weren't really great, but that's all that was there. And so when I got to, you know, to a certain point in my career where I was like, okay, I want to bring art to Sam's point. I want to bring art to people who otherwise wouldn't leave this community, and give them high quality art, not just something that's, you know, just thrown up on the wall or not really thoughtful or not really thought provoking for that space, but like really be like treated as a gift to the community, and something that, to her point again, where you go into a museum, you go into a gallery, they're super stuffy. No, not everyone feels welcomed. You know, they're telling you to step back. You're too close. You're like, you can't wear a hat in there because they're scared you're going to touch it. And I wanted to make work that it, to Will's point too, to remove that barrier of entry that made it accessible for everyone and not just the people who could quote unquote afford it. And so once I realized that was a huge part of what I do, then I started just donating murals back to the community, at least 1 or 2 a year. That's just, I want to make work for 12-year-old me, or even if they're not actually physically young, just young in like their career, that they could go in and look at it and say, okay, this is somebody doing it at a high level. Let me get in here and really like dissect how they're actually putting it together. And that was really important for me in my studio practice as well as in my murals. I want to just make people that otherwise felt shunned by the art world, make them feel like they see themselves reflected in those spaces. So yeah, that was...
Okay. And Giovanni, in your case, I think some of your work, from the way I see it, is not only made for those that enjoy art or those that enjoy installations, but you're also making it for a really broad community, maybe even people that never even seen art. So what have been some of the things that you've seen as far as interaction from the community in looking at your work? For example, the little houses that sitting on the curb representing the idea of people being pushed out or gentrification. You know, what have been some of the positives that you've gotten from the community, and maybe some pushback from developers or galleries at that? You know, you're taking risks there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to what Jeremy was saying. I think there's this sense of responsibility to the community. Because when I was growing up, you know, looking back on it now, it was like totally dysfunctional family. But everybody in the neighborhood was like that, you know, like my dad was kind of in and out of our lives early on. So my mom, it was really up to my mom, who's from Guatemala, and she was kind of holding down the fort. And so she would rely on neighbors to take care of us, like, because she had to take the bus to go to work. And she would leave us at the neighbor's house so they could walk us to school and pick us up. And I remember one instance where I was playing outside with the neighbor's kids, and they were an elderly couple. And he always said, you know, you just call me, you know, in Spanish, abuelo, like grandpa. And his grandkids were like, that's not, we were young, we're like 6, 7. He's like, that's not your kid, you know, like you can't call, you know, kids being mean. And he was like, stop. He's here in my house. He's part of our family. And you know, looking back on it now, it's just really resonating for me to, you know, as it takes literally a village to raise a child. And so now as an adult and having like this kind of creative skill set that I do, it's like, how can I not like continue this conversation with my community, especially with all the issues that we're having with gentrification, displacement. And, you know, it's been a challenge because once, you know, you put up work like this, you know, and all this goes back to my own upbringing where, you know, we lived, you know, from rent house every year, the rent would go up, we had to find a new house, and still seeing these same issues come back in the city of Dallas and pretty much everywhere else. And I was like, okay, how do I like bring this conversation to the forefront? And I would team up with, you know, organizations to kind of help spread this word, but it was mostly about putting stuff up here to start a different dialogue, because, you know, when I was putting up these kind of piñata real estate signs, you know, there's this conversation happening around like 2017, 2016, about how great it was, like Oak Cliff was gonna be redeveloped and there's all these great things coming. But then I was like, you know, they're not building anything for us, the existing community. And I was like, you know, let's have a different conversation, because the people who held down this neighborhood, we put our kids in a failing school system. Nobody else wanted to because everybody took off. We built businesses without city subsidies. We bought houses when nobody wanted them. And now that Oak Cliff was like, full of cultural vibrancy, people wanted to come back. And I didn't like the narrative that was being told. And I was like, well, let's challenge that narrative. And let's bring this conversation to their doorstep, to these vacant lots. And so I really like that attitude of letting people know that, you know what, we are important. And, that sense of empowerment, that is, for me, what the work kind of symbolizes. Like, how do we organize? And, unfortunately, all this led me to run for city council, which was probably a bad part of my move. But, yeah.
More than once.
More than once. And that's the thing, I think growing up in a Latinx community, respect is everything. It's just like, and so when you see people continually disrespect your community, disrespect, your community members, it pisses you off. And it's just like, fuck that. Like, that's why one of the reasons I ran for city council, because I didn't see anybody talking about our needs. And yeah, it all stems from my upbringing, people taking care of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it seems like, going off of that point, it seems like you don't really need permission to do the work that you're doing publicly. So for young students or young artists, like, what drove you to say, you know what, I don't need permission. I'm gonna go put a installation, or I'm gonna go paint a mural. Like, how did you decide that? How did you get to that point?
I started making friends with graffiti artists.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of graph friends. Like, Carlos was one of my first graph friends. So I think for me, just to see that don't give a fuck attitude that graph has, it was definitely big on me realizing I can go bigger and it doesn't matter. I still have I have a project in the chamber that I'm still gonna make happen, and it's super disrespectful, super disrespectful. But it has to be one of those I'm at a level enough that when the blowback happens, I can weather the storm. So okay. I'm not there yet, but yeah, it's gonna be super disrespectful, and it's gonna be an all-out attack on the gallery scene in Dallas.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like I said, it's one of those things that you see the homies doing it, and you're just like, okay, bet, let's do this. I'm just, it's basically my way of fighting that that narrative, like Giovanni was saying, it does piss you off when you see people coming in trying to, oh my God, it's so it's you came here because we built the culture here, and now you're pushing all the culture out because you don't feel safe, or it's sketchy, or whatever terms you want to. Thanks, babe. You're using whatever terms that make you feel like you're not being anti-brown, anti-black, and so, like I said, we have a project that, yeah, it's gonna be awesome. But like I said, it really, it's our way of fighting that power, and I'm 42 now. My knees are too bad to be running from the cops. So, so it's our way of yeah, we're gonna push back without having to jump fences and hide behind trains and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, when I was you all's age, excuse me, that it took me a really long time to kind of, I guess, not ask permission or worry about asking permission or whatever. And then, but I think being an artist, sometimes you have this will to do it, and especially with the real estate signs, because it took me, it took me about 15 minutes to kind of go drive out there, set out the sign, put down the sandbags, and but it's this calling that you have. I remember my sister and some other friends were like, so let me get this straight. Cause I was building this thing in my backyard, and they're like, you want to put up a piñata real estate sign with nothing in it, and you just want to leave it out? You're not gonna make any money off of this? It's it's not about the money, and I think that was the biggest thing, and so yeah, doing it's scary, but I think at this moment it's try not to think about that too much and just go do it, and then if you get in trouble, then you get in trouble. But my thing was always, I always knew how to write a really great press release, so I would just put that out, and then, but I know developers would get upset with me, right? And then one of them, I think we ended up having coffee because he reached out to me, and he was like, I've been seeing the work you're doing around the neighborhood, and I just want to say, I commend you for it, but that narrative is just wrong. We're out here making all these Mexicans rich. And I was like, There's a difference between rich and wealthy. You're not creating wealth in our community, right? You're taking it. And so he kind of just used that 5 to 10 minutes to chastise me on what a bad job I was doing with the work, and then he left. But the thing that I took away from it was that, you know, he was scared. Like, there was this challenge to his narrative that he was worried about the optics of it. And, you know, and it was funny because I was like, man, you're afraid of a cardboard box and tissue paper. It's like, okay, I know where I'm at. So, yeah.
Okay. Will,
Yeah,
do you want to add to that? Yeah.
I think similar. It's all about like permission and validation are these kind of ideas I keep hearing from our panel, but like stop seeking validation externally. It's like if you're validating your art practice and what you're trying to put out there as an artist, like that should be the #1 goal. And then permission. I think for mural work you should probably get landlord's permission. So that's helpful. But if you're really wanting to make work, there are spaces in DFW to put up mural work, to put up practice stuff that you don't need people's permission. And so like put that work out first, and the other stuff will follow. But really, I had to shift my mindset from like needing validation externally versus like when I go to sleep at night and the art I'm dreaming of before I fall asleep, like how can I make that and validate myself? That was the goal.
Sam, did you want to add anything to that?
I think the guys all covered
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they got it.
Well, and I think, you know, thanks to all the work that our artists have done, there's probably a lot of spaces now that would invite you to come paint a mural, come do an exhibition, come do an installation. So has there been any occasions where you have gone back to, you know, where you come from, and how did you start giving back to that community? You know, Jeremy, we kind of talked a little bit about that, but what have been some of like your biggest like accomplishments, whether they're big or not, or in your eyes at least, that have really transcended, you know, above and beyond what you thought it was going to do?
I think for me with my workshops, it's having people come back and be like, oh man, I've like started taking commissions, or I've started doing this, or it's people who knew me during my music career who have continued to follow me and be like, I love what you're doing now. I want to try this thing out. Thank you for introducing me to this, you know, this thing that I didn't know existed. For me, I feel like that's just like you always want to leave some sort of impact or, you know, just something behind. So to see that I'm at least sharing in that way, people aren't just enjoying my artwork for the sake of enjoying my artwork, but they're also like learning something that they can then share amongst their communities and even further family and friends.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to be a part of this like growing ecosystem.
Okay. Well, let me pivot a little bit. I'm sorry on that
No,
question. For all of you, where do you see the art scene, whether it's in Dallas-Fort Worth or national or international, from when you started, where it is now, and then where would you like it to go, whether it's locally or nationally or internationally? Like, where do you see the change in that for you all?
Anybody?
I mean, I can say a few words. You know, I feel like back in 2012, 2013, there was like a really great art scene. There was like people doing shit, and then the city of Dallas had just started, you know, funding artists individually with grants and stuff. And of course, like maybe 4 or 5 years later, this city fire marshal started shutting shit down. And I think that really killed a lot of the art scene. And there was a lot of people writing about work. That was a really great time. And I try to tell my students now, it's like, you know, we're coming out of COVID, and you know, we've kind of been on lockdown, and people are waiting for something to happen, like something. As far as when I think about art, I think about outside the gallery system. It's like in our neighborhoods, there's something, we've been primed and waiting for something exciting to happen to interrupt our daily lives. And so I try to tell my students, like, think about work, how it can activate space, and how that, if we've been waiting for it, and now is the perfect time. And so that's my message to you all, you know, go out and do it.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I think just like breaking old norms of the art scene. So no shade to galleries, but like breaking the you owe all your art and 50% of any money you make to a gallery type of scene. I think those norms are changing. Access to people through like Instagram and the internet, like you can get straight to your people who care about your artwork easier than 50 years ago, 100 years ago,
10 years.
10 years ago, yeah, 5 years ago. But yeah, I think just, and then of course I have to shout out Meow Wolf, but I think there are these new up and coming things that are, I don't want to say populist, but they're providing art to a full range of people that maybe museums and galleries haven't done in the past few decades. So I hope there will be more Meow Wolves. I hope there will be more mural festivals. I hope there will be more spaces for 4-year-olds and 75-year-olds to understand art differently than having to go to the DMA or the Modern. That's like what I'm excited to see. And now there's, you know, people paying for it, so that's what's up.
Yeah. Okay. Sam or Jeremy?
I definitely think there's been a huge shift between if you're an artist, you have to be represented by a gallery. You're going to do one show every 18 months, and that's about it. I think now there's less restraint on being an artist because you can, like Will said, find your people, find your niche, find the exact, your little pocket of your community or, you know, whatever you're working on, and you know that you will be accepted there and you can build a thriving career without, you know, wondering, or are people gonna like this? Is this gonna be okay? Because you know, the people that want to see you are already like there. So there's a little less risk involved right there, I feel like, once you've got your community going, that I don't think you could do before because you were at the mercy of these traditional ways of being an artist. So yeah.
Okay. Jeremy, do you want to finish off that question?
Yeah, I think the gallery scene is some shade to galleries. So I think a lot of times the gallery scene, especially now, they're still operating on like what I like to call a blockbuster business model. And we're living in a streaming world. And so a lot of people, like, you can go direct, like, it's so democratized now that you can go directly to everyone's point. Like, you can go directly to your consumer, you can go directly to your collectors, your followers, whatever word you want to use to make you feel better about your art. You can go directly to those people. And I think a lot of times, like, galleries and museums are still operating on the we're doing you a favor mood or whatever. And so I think it's definitely changed in that way that we can like go directly to our people, and I think it's as far as it's come, it can be a lot further along in that process. But the gatekeepers, whoever that may be, obviously have a lot more invested to not let that happen. So they push back on, if you're not represented by a gallery, you're not a real artist or whatever, or you have to be mindful of who your collectors are and not sell to certain people, and just all these weird conversations that I've had with some gallerists that I'm just like, how are you gonna tell somebody that is hungry today that they're not supposed to sell a piece that somebody wants to buy right now just because they're not a prestigious enough collector? And so it's like a whole bunch of goofy shit that art like the art world is into that I think, like I said, it could be a lot further along, but there definitely has been some progress made in the last 10 years, but we can change it and make it better. Yeah.
Well, it kind of sounds like, you know, we're at a time where the artists can take a lot of the power back, take a lot of the control back. And I think that's important, you know, because it's constantly changing and shifting. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm going to get to one last question, and then we're going to open it up to questions in the audience and anybody on the YouTube stream. If you have any questions, you can start typing those in a bit. But really quickly, just kind of the final thing, what inspired your work, and then what are some future plans you might want to mention before we finish our part? Anybody want to start? Who inspired you, and what can we look for in the future? And you can't just say me, Will.
Carlos, it's only Carlos. I mean, I really look up to a lot of queer artists in art history land and what they did in the 80s and 90s. And hoping to make more queer art for future generations to look up to, especially as a Texan, and a lot of the bullshit we have to hear about in our news and politics. I don't need to preach to the choir, but being a Texas artist who is queer and is happy to make that type of work, so the Keith Harings of the world doing public work like that. And yeah, where I'm
And what's
headed,
next? Yeah, what's next?
Where I'm headed, I have some mural projects coming up, of course. Wolf Houston opens next year, so I'll be down in Houston for a few weeks building some fun shenanigans. And yeah, more mural fests, more art. I'm working on sculptures, even though I'm a muralist. So yeah, just always making shit.
All right. Thank you, Will. Anybody? Nick?
Yeah, I'll go. I think. Wait, the first part of the question was what's
Inspiration.
The inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, my work is, again, to reiterate what I was saying earlier about going into museums and galleries, not feeling like I saw myself represented in those works, and just basically trying to tip the scale the other way and make works that my 12-year-old self would have wanted to see. Is basically the elevator pitch of what I do. But in the future, same thing, like more mural projects, more. We're going to Basel this year, so we're showing at Basel. So that's the most immediate thing that we're prepping for. We're both showing there, and then
Showing in 2 fairs, no big deal.
I mean, you know, it's cool. MBD. Yeah, no, it's awesome. And so, if you guys haven't gone to Art Basel in Miami, definitely do yourself a favor. And even if you're not exhibiting, just go. It'll change your life. And I don't mean that like hyperbolically. Like it really will. To see that much quality work in that small of a space, like literally almost every door you can walk down the street. If it's normally a coffee shop or a library, or they take everything out and put up gallery walls, and so almost every door you walk in is a gallery space. Like the entire city of Miami that week. So if you can afford to do it, do it. It's awesome. But yeah, that's the things I can talk about that I don't have an NDA on.
For me, my work stems from wanting to create a softer space and a vulnerable moment, not just for myself or the work itself, but the people that are enjoying it. So I use a lot of bright colors. I want to keep a playful vibe. I want to bring joy. And overall, my work is also just a visual representation of the creative process, where there's, that in-between of the spark of inspiration and a like fully formed idea, just that sort of joyful moment of creating and just being in it and in the brainstorm, so to speak. And I think I'm gonna be just a little bit mushy. Part of the reason I am here is not only because of my wonderful husband, but also Carlos himself. As he said, I took several classes of his while I was here in UTA, and by far he was one of the most inspiring professors I had. And seeing, you have those professors that are like teaching you shit, but they're not doing shit outside of class, and their work ain't shit. And to see a professor like making super dope, just really cool, inspiring work that I would see out at events, like living the life of an artist and not just telling us what we were supposed to do, really set that example of like, hey, this is possible. This isn't just like a pipe dream. So thanks, Carl.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. And Giovanni?
Let's see. Well, I'm kind of still making work. I wrapped up a solo show at the Latino Cultural Center back in the summer. And let's see, my inspiration is really the community, right? It's, when I think about the neighborhood and it's things that I kind of take for granted, but I was visiting a friend in Flower Mound, and I was noticing how quiet it was, and everybody's in their houses and kept to themselves, and I thought, man, my neighborhood is filled of just fucking loud music, fucking like the smell of fajitas on the grill, and it's like gunshots, it's like all that fucking bright houses, bright colored painted houses. It's like that vibrancy, that pulsating vibrancy. It's like that's what I try to capture in the work, right? And how that's disappearing as well. And that's why I use a kind of piñata as this kind of ephemeral object. But I think for me it's just about making the work. And, so, yeah. And I guess kind of playing off kind of your comment about Carlos, I think every student should be researching their professor, like look them up, Google them, what are they doing? What kind of work are they making? And then, I hate to put you on the spot
okay.
like that, but then go up to them and bug the shit out of them. Like, how'd you do that? Like, how'd you get into that kind of network or whatever? Just like soak up, because the secret that you all don't know, he has to pay attention to y'all, right? Because once you graduate, he's like, I just ignore this email. But once,
But I don't.
he doesn't, but I'm just saying. And then also, like, you know, there's a really great, my colleague at TWU always says this really great thing. He's like, believe that the world needs you because we do. We need creatives.
Yep.
And you all are in the right spot where you all need to be. And just keep making the work, because if the work is good, opportunities will follow.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. We have a few minutes. Does anybody in the audience have a question for any of our guests today? Okay, Ben? And Ben,
taking notes.
Professor Ben Terry is professor in painting, so thank you.
Yeah. I've been like jotting down a shit ton of things, and there's like a vibe about you guys, like y'all are cool people, and I like that. But it's also very like sort of anti-establishment, anti-gallery, anti-museum. It's stuffy. It's not our space. But you're also like Art Basel, fucking yeah. And then you're doing stuff in Nike and IBM.
Yeah.
Giovanni, you got stuff at the Nasher. Meow obviously fucking huge. I don't know how much it costs to like get into there.
A lot.
It's a lot to get into there, right? So I don't know. Like those are two very different things, I guess. And I'm curious how you square that in your head. With, like, fuck those guys, but also like
Give me your
come
money.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the way I can kind of, in my mind, it makes sense is because I have that hustler mentality of I shot weddings, I shot music videos, I shot all these things so that I could afford to make the work that I wanted to make. And so it's that same principle now where it's you have to play the game. Unfortunately, as much as we want it to change, it is what it is. Like we can fight to like make it change, but as it is right now today, November 2nd, 2023, we still have to use those institutions to be able to feed our family. And so being able to do that to fund you making the work you want to make, you know, some artists, they take commissions, some artists cash a Nike check. Whatever the thing may be, like figure out what it is that makes sense for you and your practice and be really, really, really thoughtful, mindful, and deliberate about what do you want from your art practice. Do you want to be rich? Do you want to be famous? Do you want to, you know, be a voice for the community? Whatever that thing is, and be as authentic and genuine to yourself as possible, answering that question, and then make every decision going forward towards that goal. And so for me, like I said, it definitely is something that, yeah, it's two different opposing worlds, but at the end of the day, it's my version of taking commissions because I don't really take too many commissions.
I'm just gonna follow up like on that. Do you find that I know just, you know, each of your kind of works just from being in the same city and following, you know, what you've all been doing for the past, I don't know, 5-10 years, something like that. And so I feel like I've sort of seen you all get to this point of having a recognition, at least within our local artist community, and in some cases even beyond that kind of with this like squaring up of, you know, independent sort of, you know, artist-run things and then corporate or, you know, other things. Do you find that you are at a place where you can kind of leverage those relationships and the time that you've put in there, where now like you're able to shift how some of those projects are being approached and sort of use it as like a teachable moment for the people who have the money to fund projects?
Totally.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit maybe about like, or give an example of a way that's happened for you guys?
I think when you hit a certain there is like a level, like sometimes in the beginning it's hard, like you just have to take the job. You're like, I've got bills to pay, I have to eat this month, I've got kids to take care of, I've got to take this job. It is what it is. Unless you're just fucking Bezos, you're just not going to be able to say no to certain things. But I feel like all of us here have done, you know, well in that we've kind of reached a point where certain projects we know are not a good fit, and we have a little bit of a runway where we can say no to those things. And sometimes the shit that comes to you is absolutely absurd. And sometimes it's from a place of ignorance, sometimes it's from a place of disrespect, and you're allowed to push back in those moments. Like, there's been times, you know, there's always some freaking organization that wants to hit you up at the end of Women's History Month or Black History Month when there's 2 days left in the month, and they're like, we need an entire show hung tomorrow. Can you do this for $50? And it's like, absolutely fucking not. Also, are you out of your mind? Because how dare you even make this attempt to do this? You're better off just like not doing it at all than trying to last minute say that you're down for the cause while also taking advantage of an artist. And I think a lot of times, maybe not a lot of times, but sometimes it behooves you to speak up in those moments, because when it is from a place of ignorance or just, you know, this person's at the bottom of the rung, they're just doing what they're told, they will learn from that and remember it, and when they step to you the next time, they're going to come correctly, or hopefully to the next artist that they talk to, they will do what's actually right. So I do recognize that the ability to say no to certain jobs or to push back on some, you came to me for a reason, don't try to like stop me from doing this or ask me to do something that's completely outside of my wheelhouse. I don't need to take this job. Also pay me or kick rocks. I recognize that comes from a place of like privilege once you hit a certain point.
But that's also paving the way for the people who are coming out and empowering the entire
Exactly.
artist.
Exactly.
Totally. I think just a really quick, I think to that point too, it's really easy to take every job that comes your way just because you have to pay bills and you don't know when. It's always feast or famine when you're an artist.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I had to learn that I feel like I learned way too late in my career is taking every single job in hopes that it would pay bills, no matter how small the budget was actually keeping me busy so that when the jobs that I wanted to do or were higher paying jobs came along, I couldn't do them because I had 15 other deadlines of smaller paying gigs. And so it was like, if I had just waited for that one, then I wouldn't have been taking, those 15 equaled that one. And so being really, like I said, just thoughtful and mindful and trusting your gut of saying, I see red flags now in the email phase. Yeah. It's not gonna get better when they sign a check or when they send you the deposit. So if you like I said, you'll do, and like, I think everybody up here can attest to this. Like, there's clauses in all of our contracts is because somebody fucked us over one time and we're like, oh yeah, never again. And so you just keep
learning,
abridging your, like, you just keep adding on to your contract every time you get burned. But just be like, understand that that's part of the process, and that, like I said, just if you see that it's red flags and just they can't even answer a question in the first like emails, it's not going to get better when money is involved. So just go ahead and save yourself. And also, don't do anything until they pay a deposit. I don't care. I don't care. Like, don't lift a finger. I don't care if they're, just give me like a quick sketch. Like, no, you don't
Never
get
a
shit
quick
until
sketch.
the job doesn't start until the deposit is
Little
paid.
design deposit.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think going back to Ben's thing with the gallery systems and you know, for the longest time I worked in the gallery, and I think there are good galleries, right? And there are spaces that they can get into that we cannot.
Right.
I've worked with artists who are introverts like myself, who will do terrible in front of a collector and talking about their work. We're like, let me talk for you. Let's sell this work. But yeah, I mean, I think there are some terrible galleries, and you know, there's a gut instinct. You know when you're like, no. So I think for the most part, you know, I always tried to be, when I was involved in galleries, you know, try to be an advocate for the artist. So I don't think all galleries are bad, but I think it comes down to you as the individual artist. Like, you have to have this set of values that you negotiate with yourself before, like, you make it big or whatever. And a really great example, I was doing a public art project in Houston, and I had submitted 2 designs, and they chose the one that was a little bit more, I used a text, it was a text-based work, and it was a little bit more like avant-garde, I think, you know, just kind of in your face. And the thing was, like, the panel, they didn't speak Spanish, and the text was in Spanish, and they then Google translated it, and they were like, hey, Gio, you know the original work that we selected, what you said it meant doesn't mean what it says. And I was like, it does, it's just you're white, and you don't know But you know, the thing that we had this long conversation about trust with an artist, and you need to be able to trust the artist. And at the end, they said, "All right, well, we've decided not to go with this, but we do like the other proposal, but we want you to make all these changes to it as far as colors and texture, and make it look like the other one." And that was at that moment where it was a big payday for me. And I was like, "Fuck, what do I do? You know, I really want the money." Because I got child support to pay and like all these other bills, and that will happen. You will have shit to pay. And you know, I thought to myself, okay, what would younger me say? Younger me would be like, no, I'm not going to do it because you know I've made, you know, I don't compromise that way artistically. And so I basically said, you know what, you choose either one, the one that you originally selected, or the other one, but I'm not changing designs on that. And I will walk away from the project. And then they're like, okay, we'll choose the other one. So it worked out, and it was, you know, everything was fine. But you know, you'll have those moments where you're like, shit, you know, like what do I do? But if you negotiate with yourself beforehand, what am I willing to compromise on and what I'm not, you'll be in a better mood or a better place to kind of make these decisions moving forward. So yeah.
Hold on.
You have oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to be the guy to piggyback on everybody else's stuff, but also I think it's really easy, especially for like students and younger artists, to not want to have those difficult conversations with clients or with anyone. Like to that point, like where you're saying either take this or take that. I think knowing yourself and, like I said, even if you have to physically write it out, having those standards of this is what I'm about, this is what my work is about, this is what. It doesn't matter if that's going to be it for the next, like I said, 20 years. It just has to be true for you right now. And if you have that confidence, then when you tell someone your price, you don't have to, like that waffling, going back and forth or trying to help them or meet them where they're at on their budget, that to them signifies that they can talk you lower or talk you out of something. But if you come to them just very directly and say, like, I can't tell you how many times when I waffle back and forth trying to meet someone on their budget, that it becomes way more of a headache than it needed to be because I introduced that little bit of them thinking that they could talk me out of something or have more control in it. Whereas when I hit them with a, yeah, it's going to be 5 figures for this, and they're like, okay, cool. And so it's just like, I don't know how much money I've missed out on trying to help people instead of just setting it and like, it is what it is, take this or I can move on. Even if you know in the back of your mind and your heart of hearts, I really fucking need this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to play that like confident hardball, like I can take it or leave it, even if you really can't leave it. Like I said, just having that confidence definitely is it goes a long way, and so it's something that I would say at this stage of your career is like really practice having that confidence. And it's fake it till you make it, just like anything else. Like just you'll be surprised on how many people give you a yes versus, you know, you talking yourself out of it because you can't afford that thing.
And trusting your gut, for sure. I think we've all kind of said that, but it's like if you can trust your gut and you can go to sleep happy with the decisions you made, like that's what matters. Yeah. Kind of back to your point too, it doesn't always have to be black and white. Yeah. My work is very black and white, but I try to live in like a gray world. I think like you can make a lot of money off of a single commission because that IBM money will now fund my studio practice for a year and a half. That then I can make whatever work I want and not be worried about who the collector or buyer is. And that is some like gray area because you are fuck the man and also please give me your money. So like balancing that in between, and I try to be comfortable in the gray area, the in between the black and white dichotomy that some people say that's your only option and it's not. So trust in that gut.
And if you lose a project, there's another one.
There's gonna be another one.
Do we have a YouTube?
Some love and hearts and thanks from YouTube. We have Ariel Morales here as us.
Hey.
Hi, Ariel. Hello.
Artist, thank you so much. Hey. And Manuel Herrera's comment. I've met all of these artists and will attest to how welcoming and helping they've been as a new artist working hard to jump in the scene. Every time I reached out to them, they've been so helpful. One for the meal, one for the real.
Oh, that's a good ass.
Okay.
Let me write that down.
Should we take one more or should we cut it there? We're good? Okay, let's take another question and we'll wrap it up. Yes.
What tips do you guys have, like for us as students, to really get involved in like the DFW art scene and things like that? Starting to make connections. What advice do y'all have
Go to the shows.
Yes.
Staying home is not an option. You have to go get FaceTime at these shows with you'll start to see the same people at the events, the same coordinators and things, and having that FaceTime when you have your event or your showing or your things, you've already started building people who are familiar with your name and familiar with what you do, so they're more likely to pay attention and listen. If you're just some rando that just pops up and they're like, everybody's like, where the fuck did this guy come from? Like, and they're just like, unless you're really fucking amazing, they're gonna blow you off. And it's like, it sucks. But the more shows that you go to, the more events that you go to, the more likely you're going to find a group of artists or people that are attending these that are in the same vibe and vein and like would already be receptive to what you're doing. So you'll have like a better jumping off point of making all of those connections. So yeah, you can't be a homebody. You gotta go out. It sucks.
I think a lot of times we like
Set a timer.
compartmentalize. Yeah, facts.
We go for 30 minutes.
Yeah, man, I'm out.
And then I can leave.
I think a lot of times we compartmentalize like our art practice from our like everyday lives and just like I think it's just like anything else. Going to these galleries, going to these museums, going to these art events, it's building a relationship just like any other relationship or friendship. You're gonna have to go out and show FaceTime. You're gonna have to have conversations. It's gonna be uncomfortable. Just go up and talk to people. Most people aren't dicks. Just be like, hey man. And if they are, like, you don't want to deal with them anyway. And so a lot of the community, and not just here but anywhere, is about, just like I said, having those relationships and not being pushy. It'd be the exact same rules of dating, basically.
Yeah.
Like, if you come on too strong to a gallery, they're gonna be like, yo, kick rocks, get out of my face, like, what are you doing? So you kind of have to like let it be organic and not force it and do all of those things. Obviously that takes more time, but the more open calls you can, respond to and do those type of events. Group shows are a great way of, cross-pollinating like audiences. But I think like doing the legwork and treating your art career as any other, it's a muscle just like anything else. Like, you have to work it out. You have to like get big at it. So the more time and money and just effort you put into it, not necessarily money, but definitely time and effort, is going to go a long way if that's your ultimate goal, is to get out there and do that. Because it really, especially post-pandemic, it's really easy to not leave the house. Like, especially in Dallas, where you're like, I don't want to deal with parking. I don't want to fight like this.
Like, it rained. I don't want to leave the house.
Yeah, it rained on a movie that I'm watching. I don't even want to. I'm not in the mood to leave. But like, just getting out of the house, and like she said, like, we've done times where we've set a timer where we're like, yo, we're just gonna go show face. And we're notorious. Like, anybody that's been to any event that we've been at, we're notorious for just dipping, like leaving, like. We'll just, like, we call it smoke bombing, where we'll literally, like, ninja, just, like, smoke bomb and just, like, disappear, and we don't say bye to anybody. We're just like, we got to get out of here. So just, like, just being there that you're in a couple of photos. And
Yeah.
I was here. You talked to a couple people, and then you're, well, he was here. Yeah, I'm out. I got to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I think when I was younger, I would always go to all the openings. And again, I'm an introvert naturally, so I'm extremely shy, and I don't like talking to people, but I had to mentally prepare myself and have a few drinks and then go mingle. But the thing is like making sure you go out, but also like have a good core, right, of people, because there are going to be moments when you're like, fuck, nothing's happening, right? And those tight-knit group of people will inspire you to continue to go, or they'll create opportunities for you, and you'll kind of lean on them at your hardest times, but also go out and make shit happen. If nothing's happening, if you're not getting any shows or anything, like for me, when I got out of school, I remember like Annette Lawrence, who's my biggest mentor, she said, I told her, I was like, man, all these group shows that I'm applying, it was like $30 at that time to apply. I was like, fuck, I don't have like $200 to spend on all these group shows. And she's like, let me tell you something, Gio, like, if you got into this group show, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to like the other work that's in it. So why don't you just go make your own group show and go get a place? And I remember back in undergrad, there was a group of these artists who I wasn't part of their group, but it was just aspiring because they were just so hungry. And one day they decided to make their own exhibition, so they rented like a Motel 6 somewhere in town, and they moved all the furniture to the back of the room and they hung up their work and they invited all these people. So it's like doing things like that, you know, that's what is gonna get people's attention. It's like, you know, in grad school, I think we rented a U-Haul and we parked it down in a design district and created our own like movie exhibition. So it's like doing things like that, but you gotta have a good group of people, right? So they can split the cost with you, but also motivate you. So yeah.
And you don't have to split sales. That's awesome.
And that builds your network too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You've got a group of people, then you've got everybody that they all know hearing
Right.
about it instead of just your people.
And people start noticing, like, oh, like, that person's doing that. Like, let's go talk to them. You know?
That's some
Will, do you want to add?
memorable
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
shit. Oh, no, I was just saying, that's some memorable shit. I would.
Will, did you want to add anything to like how to get involved in the art scene in Dallas Fort Worth?
I think showing up, so going to the shows, like they said, there's tons of like drink and draws and draw nights from, you know, at tattoo shops to like formal galleries, the young contemporaries at Dallas Contemporary. Like there's lots of places to show up as a like up and coming artist, and it's just about like going and putting yourself out there, and just like dating, being rejected, and that's okay. Like that's fine. And yeah, to Gio's point, like same, you know, Meow Wolf was happening 2016, 2018, and like we thought that was fucking cool. So me and 5 friends rented a West Dallas house and just like made a project house, and we did our own like installations and whatever. We scraped money together. We didn't have tickets. It was just like just do the stuff, do the opportunities that you want to be a part of, and then it will snowball from there. So
Yeah, you can't go wrong if you're being ambitious. Like,
Right.
people will notice it at least.
exactly. And you'll always learn something.
Yeah.
You'll learn from failing and you'll learn from succeeding. So just like put yourself out there. I got over rejection years ago, so like now it's fine. Reject me all day long. That's cool.
Facts.
When I was in the gallery system, or when I was a gallery director, assistant director, there was an artist who came in who I'd never seen, because they never, that's what, to your point, is like, go so people get to know you, but he showed up with a CD drive of his artwork in calendar form. And so his, you know, it had like, I was like, what? And I was like, you know, I'm curious, I'm an artist. I was like, I'll put it in there. And it was like some bad landscape paintings. And it had a calendar for it had 12 paintings for the 12 months. And they were like the fall season, whatever. I was like, wow, I think this is just really bad art. But then it's also kind of interesting, like really bad, like performance art at the same time. So I don't know. But, you know, like those modes of thinking are really outdated. So do what Sam says.
Show up.
Yeah.
And really quickly, to add to Gio's point about having a good core group, all of you are in a good position to do that. You're surrounded by like-minded individuals that I'm pretty sure are just as curious and as hungry to go out and experience openings or shows. And then while you're at school here, you can find a classroom to have a show, or go to the UC, there's a space where you can have shows as well. So this is a good place to start while you're in school, and then hopefully you create good habits that go from school into the real world when you graduate. So I think that was a very good point, or very good points from everybody.
Yeah, me and Ben went to school together, and you know, I didn't like him at first. But he grew on me. And I was like, yeah. But he's one of these, you know, back in school, he was one of these people I hung out with all the time. And it was great. I mean, yeah.
And now they're very, very talented, growing instructors, professors, and they can help each other that way.
Yeah.
Same here, I can lean on any of these artists if I have any issues or questions. So these are my core group, or some of my core group already. It's pretty large, and it keeps growing.
That's right.
Yeah. Do we have time for one more, or we're good?
Yes?
Okay, anybody got one last question? We'll take one more. Anybody?
Dun, dun.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I have to pick your brain about rug tufting.
What's up? What's up?
Getting started in the social media world, like YouTube or Instagram, what advice do you have for really growing a community and how to be authentic online?
I'll take this one, baby. It's funny because I'm like a completely different person when the camera's on, so that's why
So if I'm gonna be honest, social media is hard for me. So when I finally sit down and make the post or do the thing, I never want it to feel hollow, because I flat out will not do it. So I think finding your shtick, so to speak, or whatever pillars you want to stand on or share, and sort of like sticking to those regardless of the trends that are happening and regardless of, you know, a desire for virality or any sort of that thing like that. You just have to make the thing. And it's very easy to sit there and be like, oh, well, this post isn't perfect, or this, you know, shot was kind of grainy, or like whatever. And it's kind of just like, the people that want to see that, they'll find it. Maybe not as many as you want, maybe not as quickly as you want. But if you don't put it out there at all, they'll never find it. So it's kind of just a get your reps in, and eventually you'll look up and be like, oh, wow, I've got a good core group of people that, you know, when I do a release, they're the first orders in.
Yeah.
Or if I, you know, send out this newsletter, I can tell that they clicked it. Like, it's literally just you've got to do the thing in order to get the results. So not being paralyzed by comparison when you're looking at these larger accounts, or somebody that you like are inspired by and look to, and feeling like, oh, well, mine's not as good as that. Yours will never be as good as that until you do the thing. Like, it's literally just building that, you know, that habit, that strength of like doing it. And, you know, there's gonna be people who are like, social media doesn't mean anything, and it's not worth anything, and it's dumb. And it's like, if that's what it is to you, so be it. For me, this is a tool in my arsenal that I will use for as long as I'm able, and build as big as I can get with it. So.
You know, I have a question to piggyback off that.
Yeah, sure. What's up?
I feel like all y'all are really great at social media, which I'm not. But how much time are you dedicating to the social media? Like, if a practicing artist, like, how much are you like producing the videos, or is it just a really organic thing? Like, I put something on, kind of like normal people.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, what is that process like, and how many hours when you know, once you become this artist, and how much should you dedicate to the social media aspect of the
When I'm in
process?
a good zone, I schedule in time to be like, okay, but instead of just blindly, oh, I'll do this and this and this and this, it's more of I have this specific idea, so I know I need these shots, I know I need these pictures, and as I see them come up, I'll make sure I get them. So I try to keep it in that, instead of just like blindly doing things, unless it's just setting up a camera while I'm working, and later when I have a little free time, I'll dig through and see if there's any usable footage. Or if I am in the middle of like tufting a rug and I'm like, oh man, this is looking really cool, just setting that camera up for a couple of seconds and not being so, this has to be perfect, exact framing, because I feel like that's where you sort of like lose a lot of time. So I think for me, when it comes to creating from the social media side, or even when I was, you know, more active on my YouTube channel, it's being very deliberate with the time that's spent there, so that it's not taking away from my practice. Because for a minute there, I was making YouTube videos, and then I realized I was only making YouTube videos and not actually making work.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, well, we're gonna have to dial this back and just go back to making work. So it's been a while since I've uploaded on my YouTube channel, but I've now looked at my plan of action for like other things and other projects, and be like, okay, I know I can set up the camera while I'm doing this, and, you know, maybe I'll make a video with that, maybe I won't. But, you know, just having those sort of things, or just those little, like, I feel like as for artists on Instagram, we have a bit more leeway. We don't really have to do comedy skits, like, if that's not your thing. We don't have to do like the
Dances.
promos of stuff, or dances if that's not your thing. There's a lot of like parts and corners of the internet that like those little aesthetic, I'm just gonna watch you mix paint on your palette, and you gotta do that every day when you go to your studio, so mix paint on your palette, or cut this thing, I just wanna hear the sound of scissor cutting. Like, that's the fun part of the internet. You can find your little weird cool corner, and it's just like, all right, cool, I'll just post those videos. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think to both things, for your question, I think reframing how we view like social media success. For me, it was always like, you know, if I don't get 1,000 likes on this, then it was a fail, it flopped or whatever. And reframing it from the position of like a real life thing. Like, if you did an exhibition and you had 137 people come to your exhibition, you would feel like that was a huge success. But if 137 people watch your TikTok or your YouTube video, you're like, I only got 137 views. Fuck. And it's like, if you like reframe kind of like what you're considering success, like just doing it. Also, to that point, done is better than perfect.
Yep.
So as long as you like put it out there, you'll grow, you'll get better. No matter how bad you think you are right now, there's someone that is a lower tier than you, quote unquote, that's looking at you saying, oh my God, if I can just get to that level, my life would be so perfect. And realizing that instead, think about that person instead of think about the person that you're, quote unquote, chasing.
Yeah.
It's a lot healthier, one, but two, it feels like I said, for me, that person, I always visualize 12-year-old me looking at what I'm doing now. And like, even if I'm not where I want to be, I'm still looking at it from the perspective of like, yo, 12-year-old me would be like, yo, you're fucking killing it, bro. Like, you're the man. And so, like that, like I said, it makes you feel better. It's a warmer feeling than, fuck, I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. So I'm kind of delusional in that way that I'm just like, yeah, I don't, like, I'd rather chase that 12-year-old success and impress that 12-year-old me than whatever other imaginary person I'm imagining is better than me. And to your point about like what time, it's not natural at all for me. Like, it doesn't come natural at all. Filming me is just such a huge, like, I'll set the camera up and just be like, yeah, it's there. I'll paint and then I'm here. What I had to realize in the like recent years is we spend time making this piece, and people that make TikTok dance videos or skits or whatever, they can put out a video every 5 minutes if they want to because they're just chasing all these trends. With us making art, we feel like we'll do the piece, we'll post the piece, and then we never talk about it, show it, do anything with it again after we posted it. The reality is most people aren't online whenever you do post it. The way the algorithm kind of hides your posts, I'll repost the exact same thing like a month later or a week later. And so it's not like you always have to be creating new pieces. You can just keep recycling the work, re-edit it. You don't even have to re-edit it. You can throw a different song on it. You can do whatever and keep reposting, and you don't have to post the finished product. You can post the process of...
People love the process.
Like, and then it makes them want to come back to see like, okay, let me see how this turned out. How did they finish this, whatever. And so I think a lot of times we always try to show start to finish, this is the whole process, this is what I did, and now I got to make 100 paintings a week to keep up with, people paying attention to the channel, when the reality is like you can make 100 pieces of content on one painting, just cutting it up, not finishing it, throwing a different sound on it, doing like showing like mixing on the palette, showing whatever your thing is. Like, she did a video one time, it's one of my favorite videos she ever did, where she just set the camera up, like laid it on the ground and just trimmed one of her pieces, and so it was just falling yarn onto the camera, and I was like, that's so fucking fire. Yeah. Like, that is so tight. And so I was just like, what can I do that's in that same, I don't want to drip like paint on my camera or anything, but like it was just such a, and she did like in slow motion, like 120 frames a second, so it was just like this super soothing falling. I was like, that shit was fire. I'm still in that shit. So, so like I said, I think approaching the way I look at it, social media is such a chore, but the way I look at it is,
it's a marketing tool.
If you're using it as a marketing tool, if you post once a year, the right person might see that post. And so if you're assuming that every post you do is going to be the one that's going to put you on and change your life, if you only post once a year, then you only give yourself one chance a year to change your life. If you're posting every single day, then you give yourself 365 chances a year to change your life. And so if you approach it with that mentality, then it's a little bit easier to just be like, and we put so much pressure on ourselves. People don't actually give a fuck. They don't care at all. They don't care if it's out of focus, if it's grainy, if it's, oh, he didn't shoot that. The only people that care are the people that aren't paying your bills, like other filmmakers, other artists, they're not buying your work, so you don't have to impress them. You just have to impress regular people.
It's
and
the
so
same as showing up to shows.
Exactly. And so, like I said, a lot of times we think people care a lot more than they actually do, when the reality is, like, we sit around all the time watching other people's YouTube videos, and I was like, man, I could never get away with doing a shot like that. Like, I would feel so self-conscious about doing a shot like that. And we're like, but you're still, like, she all the time, she's like, but you're still watching this video. Like, you didn't turn it off because it did that, or it went out of focus for 5 minutes or whatever. Like, it didn't make you turn it off. And so realizing that, and that's how most people are viewing your stuff, is the same thing. Like, it doesn't actually fucking matter. So just, who cares? Just do it. And if it fails, cool, I'm gonna show you again in a month. Because, like I said, you'll see it again, and then it might be the right person that time. So, like I said, just approaching social media, like, just like, it's a game and it doesn't actually matter, it takes a lot of the pressure
It's
off.
just a tool. So
Yeah.
like, if you want to be an influencer, great, but that is a different job than
That's a
like if you want to
different
be an
job.
artist.
Yeah.
Social media is a tool
Right.
to get your shit out there. Don't think of it as like I need to be the best art influencer and I need
Yeah.
1,000 likes for every post. Like I am not that good at it. I think most of mine is like time lapses that I speed up and then you can watch me paint. That's about it. So like use it as a tool. Remember it's a tool,
Yeah.
not the end goal.
Yeah, definitely don't fall into the trap of making work for social media.
Yeah.
You will burn yourself out and you will lose your vision and your voice trying to do that.
You can
So,
make some sponsor money. The
Yeah.
sponsors love that shit. But yeah, it's ways to be means.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And also, sorry,
No, go
also
ahead.
just remember that no matter how put together people seem and how much of an expert they seem, every single person you've ever met, from your professors to your parents to your friends, every single person you've ever met is making that shit up as they go.
Yes.
And once you realize that, then you're just like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. I can stand on this table right now and do some shit, and y'all be like, that shit was cool or crazy or whatever.
So post it. Just post
Post
away.
it.
Yeah.
Just fire that shit off and just turn your phone off. Just shoot it out and be like, nah, I'm good. I'm fucking whatever.
Well, honestly, I can sit here all day and talk with this group of artists. I love being around them. But we're going to go ahead and finish that off. I want to thank the Art and Art History Department for making this possible. I want to thank our film crew for being here today as well. I also want to thank Lilia Kudelia for putting all this together. I want to thank my colleague, Professor Ben Terry, for co-hosting this with me. He did a lot of work on his end. And I want to thank all of you all for being here today as well. But I also want to thank our artists for being here, taking time out of their busy schedules to come share knowledge. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And thank you to Carlos for moderating and reaching out.
Well, I'm sure they would like to stick around for a few minutes if anybody wants to ask any one-on-one with them. But other than that, thank you, everybody, for attending. And I believe this will be available on YouTube if you want to rewatch it or invite friends to watch it later. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Lilia, anything you want to share?
More comments and thanks and applause and great talk, Armando Puente. I personally enjoy your painting live sessions, Jeremy.
Hey, all right.
That's awesome. That's another thing. Like on TikTok, I'm gonna paint anyway, so I just set the camera up and just have it over my shoulder.
There you go. Easy peasy.
Free
Thank you,
content.
everybody. Thank you.